Hey,
All good?
Okay.
Let's do it.
Hi, I'm Pritesh.
Hi, I'm Charlie.
Charlie's a career coach and an experienced marketing recruiter who recently helped me in figuring out what I want to do with my career.
And Pritesh is an experienced marketing professional who's had a well-refined approach to figuring out what he wants from his career and a robust approach to getting there.
Like, you've had over a decade of experience in recruitment, right? So how have you seen job searching change over the past few years?
What I hear most of from the candidates I speak to is just how multi-channel the whole experience is. And I think probably the phrase that I hear most of from people is it's a full-time job looking for a job.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you approach it in that way, you're not going to be caught out by surprise. Obviously, there's going to be the occasional quick win where you're headhunted for a specific role, or you're maybe given a tap on the shoulder from an ex-boss. But for most people, it does feel like a full-time job. And I'd say, if you look at the complexity of that ecosystem within recruitment agencies, headhunters, talent acquisition, specialists who are in-house, specialist job boards, the huge morass of information that is linked in, it's really confusing for people. Yeah. And if you're coming to that fresh, let's just say you've had a 10-year career with one business, all of this is new. So what I always kind of say to people is, well, of course you're confused. You haven't experienced this for 10 years. It's changed a lot. So you really need to reset and learn the new way of doing things. You've quite recently gone through the experience yourself. What have you found to be some of the kind of frustrations, I guess, within a job search?
For me, it'd been the same. It'd been a few years since I'd done any searching, and it was noticeably different. I think, yes, the models were still there, recruiters and talent boards and all that stuff, but it just felt like it was more intense. Some of the frustrations were things like just the sheer number of platforms and websites that you could go and see potential roles on, but actually then learning that most recruiters and most companies are using LinkedIn, applying for roles which on paper I felt like I was a strong match, but just never hear any feedback, whether it was even just that I've received your application or sorry, you're not right. Just it felt like at times I was throwing rocks into the ocean and hoping someone would find it. It was just quite soul destroying, that kind of black hole experience.
As a recruiter, obviously, I think the last year has exacerbated this with so many people out of work, but the huge volume of applications that one gets, it's really hard to give a personal experience back. But that's no excuse. All of these platforms have automated tools.
Right.
And so recruiters, as well as in-house HR teams, if they haven't got those automated processes set up, then you're actually doing quite a lot of damage to your employer brand.
And I've seen it from a recruiting side as well, recruiting for my teams and stuff. It's just a sheer volume of people, whether that's because you can now see it on LinkedIn telling you the numbers, but just it felt, I was applying for roles where 200 people had already applied. And you just kind of think, well, is there any point? It feels like a role I would apply for. It feels like a good fit. But what's the point of applying when there's so many people already ahead of me who may be better suited because on paper they've got a better job title? So actually, I just won't do it. There's that whole fear of not even bothering kind of kicks in because of the overwhelming nature. So they were definitely some massive challenges. As an experienced recruiter, how do you advise people like me then to navigate in this kind of current environment?
What I say to people is have an undercurrent of applications going out, and the flip side of obviously that automation and digital platforms is actually quite easy to apply for a job now. It's kind of a couple of clicks on LinkedIn. Your whole LinkedIn profile is then with that recruiter, and it's actually quite an easy process. But when you spot something that you really want to go for, you've got to try and navigate that organization so you don't just leave it as one of 200 names, on a pile. So you've got to use your network. I think from what I've seen, especially over COVID year, is that people are so much more generous with their time. So even if it's a connection of a connection who is a senior decision maker in that organization, normally people are more than happy to say, actually I know that person really well, or I don't know that person well. The greatest success I've seen people have is where you said, I've spotted a job I really want to go for, and now I'm going to take the time to write a good covering note and to really try and navigate through that organization. The other, I suppose, quick thing to say is that you've kind of got to see yourself as a brand. So make sure you're looking after your own personal brand. So obviously it's now very visible on LinkedIn. So there's lots of techniques, and I've worked with lots of candidates around optimizing their LinkedIn profile. So they come up in searches, but obviously when people find them, they look as good as they possibly can look. How you might, tone a conversation with HR might be different to how you tone a conversation with an in-house recruiter. Might be different to if those applications are going straight through to the CEO, and then how to communicate those that top elevator pitch to the right audience. And obviously that for a lot of people is quite daunting. And that's what I said, it's almost like a full-time job looking for a new job, because you've got to try and give it that in-depth thought. Pritesh, you've had a successful experience in terms of job hunting. Do you want to just share with people out there some practical tips that really work for you?
Our conversations and some of the coaching that we did made me realize that I needed to get quite pragmatic in the search, and there's a few key things I did. So you mentioned elevator pitch, and that's exactly what needed to happen, is to really articulate what I wanted. We have these broad statements that we want to be ahead of something, or I want to be this sort of manager or something, but actually it needs to be more refined than that. So I wrote down, with your guidance, and we bashed it out, the parameters of what I was looking for, and that's the hard must-haves from industry or culture and salary, and nice to have, like location and whether I can travel or not. And then that became my single mantra or elevator pitch out of every time I spoke to a recruiter, whether it was someone I'd spoken to before or new people I was speaking to. That would be the core of what I was getting across, so that everyone knew exactly what I wanted. And that shift in perspective changed everything for everyone. Recruiters, were given a clear message of where they could place me because I told them what I wanted. And it helped me kind of be really single-minded in looking for the next role. And I used to search for roles at 11 o'clock at night, or in my lunchtime, just scrolling frantically through feeds, trying to find find something that I can apply for. And that's a lot to deal with, especially, last year was quite a heavy year. So we changed that model, and that really helped.
Yeah.
So first it was, using those parameters that we'd identified, put on some really specific job searches, to the extent where I'm only getting one or two maybe every day or every other day.
Mm-hmm.
And then blocked out an hour on a Friday, not applying every day, on that Friday, going through the roles I'd saved and then applying properly. At first it felt completely counterintuitive, to kind of go a bit slower and be a bit more, paced out. But actually it just took all of the chaos out of applying for roles. I think that was really good. And then I kept a tracker to, keep an idea of where I applied, who I'd spoken to. And over a period of time, you get to see the trends of the roles you're applying for and whether you got responses or not, and that really helps you kind of navigate through as well. And I had some really good success in what you said, reaching out to people. The other things that happen when you do that, when you reach out to connections, is you get a response within 48 hours or less, because HR prioritize anything internally, so you will get a response. In some cases you get feedback in some shape or form if it's a negative, and it's that application goes with trust, like you said. So I think there is time and effort and value in reaching out to people. So I think that's it's all really helpful figuring out those things, and I saw a massive change when we started to do those.
No, that's really useful. I think people are going to find that really useful. So thank you. It's great.
Thanks for watching. To connect with Charlie at Fay and Partners, head over to fayandpartners.com.
And to connect to Pritesh, find him at pchohan.com.